Right now on Upfront.
Impeachment showdown.
Hopefully, she does the right thing and follows the law.
Assembly Speaker Robin Vos insisting impeachment isn't off the table, targeting Wisconsin Supreme Court Justice Janet Protasiewicz.
The threat of impeachment is always there.
Now, new insight into what would be an unprecedented and explosive move. Assembly Speaker Robin Vos is here one-on-one from the Capitol, just as the Assembly is set to vote on the high-stakes Brewers funding bill.
Likely in the Assembly on Tuesday, correct? Yeah. You have the votes to pass?
Israel at war. The aftermath of the Hamas terror attack, the Israeli retaliation underway this weekend.
So my community, as well as myself, had to evacuate to sealed rooms several times during the last week.
Rabbi Nir Barkan, a former emissary to Wisconsin, taking us inside the country. Plus, Miriam Rosenzweig, president of the Milwaukee Jewish Federation, on what's next.
And the latest from Wisconsin's delegation on Capitol Hill, the fight for a new speaker, aid to Israel, and the push to halt money to Iran.
This is Upfront with Jaron Jordan and political director Matt Smith.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. A lot to get to on this Sunday. This weekend, Assembly Speaker Robin Vos leaving open the possibility of impeaching Wisconsin Supreme Court Justice Janet Protasiewicz after the court's new liberal justice said she won't recuse herself from cases involving the state's legislative maps. This past week, former Justice David Prosser, a conservative, strongly advised Vos against the move. Prosser writing, quote, "There should be no effort to impeach Justice Protasiewicz on anything we know now. Impeachment is so serious, severe, and rare that it should not be considered unless the subject has committed a crime or the subject has committed indisputable corrupt conduct while in office," end quote.
And it is here we begin our conversation at the Capitol.
You know, they might not have given me the answer that I was hoping for, but they gave me their honest input, which is what I want.
You wanted them to tell you to impeach?
Well, not necessarily to impeach, but I want them to explain to me what all the powers are. Right? I still think that she did something that was wrong. I am seriously concerned about her ability to be an independent voice on the judiciary. They said that the Constitution is pretty clear that it has to be something that occurs in office. That's the ruling that came from Justice Prosser, and it was the advice I got from Justice Wilcox. So,
and Justice Rubinstein?
Again, I'm going to talk about the ones who've come public, right? Because I had private conversations. I'm not going to reveal those. But the idea is that if you do something in office, that's where the legislature has the ability to say you have overstepped your bounds. Okay, I understand that that's the perspective, and that's where we are.
Are you taking their perspective seriously?
Of course I am. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have asked her advice if I hadn't intended to listen to it. But that's why I look at this now. The issue of recusal has already been decided by her. We now move to the next phase. Ultimately, the U.S. Supreme Court is going to be the one that decides a lot of what's happening in Wisconsin.
Do you plan to appeal her order or appeal the potential decision?
I have to work with our attorneys on that. I mean, again,
are both options?
Both are an option. You know, I really try very hard to take people at their word. You know, I don't believe that Justice Protasiewicz can be independent when she has predetermined the case. But only time will tell. Let's see if she actually follows her oath of office or she follows the bidding of the people who paid for her campaign. We don't know yet.
Is there a scenario at this point where you would move impeachment before the court hears the case and makes a decision?
Not unless there's an egregious reason. I mean, like I say, we have not done impeachment. I think it's been once in statehood, so we are not rushing to do impeachment on anybody. But the idea that just because somebody wins an election, we say they can do whatever they want to, whether it's in the Constitution or not, I'm never going to say that. People need to follow the rule of law. They need to follow their oath of office in the Constitution. Let's hope she does. Let's hope she follows the rule of law like she said she will, and then there's no need for any of this.
If other justices agree with her, if the three other liberal justices agree with her in whatever decision they make, do you impeach them as well?
Well, first of all, I'm not doing it because of one decision. It's because whether or not you're upholding your oath of office. That's what we have to do. If you look at the Constitution, it's very clear. You have to have corrupt conduct in office, which to me would mean that you're somehow bribed or there's some kind of influence that's greater than the people of Wisconsin, or you commit a crime. That's really what impeachment is reserved for. So I think what she did was wrong by not recusing, because it's so obvious when you get a $10 million contribution, you do exactly what the Democratic Party says. You say you've prejudged the case. It certainly seems to me that it's questionable if she's going to be independent, but we're going to give her a chance to show the people of Wisconsin that she can actually hold her oath and do the right thing.
Seems like this is a political threat hanging over her head.
Not necessarily. I mean, it's the same threat that everybody has when you look at the Constitution. I mean, the threat of impeachment is always there if people don't do the constitutional duty that they were elected to do. So it's no different. It's just she has a special circumstance because we've had judicial elections for now almost 2 centuries in Wisconsin, and it's the first time we've had people prejudge cases and promise how they were going to vote. That's not right, so let's hope she doesn't do it.
Do you have the votes in the caucus to impeach?
You'd have to talk to our members. Brewers, I mean, we've had this discussion many, many times. I hope people would know that I'm pretty good at counting votes. So I wouldn't bring something to the floor if I didn't think it could pass. So let's see what happens.
Let's talk about Megan Wolf.
Sure.
The Senate has talked about impeaching her as well. State Senate Chris Kapica, the Senate president, was on the show last week, and he said he hopes you don't have a knee-jerk reaction and listens to what he's been reviewing for a long time and makes the decision to go in that direction. Doesn't sound like you want to go in that direction with Megan Wolf.
Well, I'm always open to listening to my colleagues. So I got the letter Senator Kapica sent me, and I did my due diligence. You know, first of all, I do not think that the law is unclear. When we passed the law, I voted for the creation of WEC, with some regrets now as I look back, but I voted for the creation of WEC, and it was very clear that you had to have 4 votes to be able to have somebody renominated to serve, because it was a very fixed term. You have to have 4 votes to get the person to advance. That didn't occur. So the position in my mind is vacant. So we don't need to have an impeachment about a position that is vacant. There is a process in the law that says if the commissioners can't form the 4 votes necessary to appoint a new person, the Joint Committee on Legislative Organization, chaired by myself and Senator Kapica, picks a person to stand in for 1 year. So if we have to go that route, we certainly can.
JCLO route, how fast can that happen? How fast would you like that to happen?
Well, first of all, it needs to be vacant for 45 days. So we are working our way through that process according to the law. The Senate declared it vacant. They've gone through their process. So it could certainly happen before the end of the year if we could get everything lined up.
And you're going to do that?
Well, I have to work with Senator Kapica, work with our Senate colleagues to determine what the right answer is. But I certainly think the law, in my mind, is crystal clear. The position is vacant. She was not confirmed. We need to have a new person selected by WEC. If they refuse to do that, JCLO is a natural route.
Let's talk about Brewers, likely in the Assembly on Tuesday, correct? Yeah. You have the votes to pass?
I feel very confident. We have worked really hard to try to find a bipartisan deal. Governor Evers kind of launched it with no discussion with anybody else. The team had no contribution from the locals. I think we've done a good job where the city and the county are now in support of our proposal. The Brewers are actually putting $140 million toward the upkeep of the stadium. So I think it's a very good deal for taxpayers. Again, only about 2/3 of the revenue comes just from the income taxes paid by the players are funding the upkeep of the stadium. So no taxpayer dollars are going in that wouldn't be here if the team left. So I think it's a really good deal that'll have strong bipartisan support.
Brewers going from 100 to 140 million from the original proposal?
They're already paying about 40 million. So that number increased.
So the additional 100
So it's additional 100
stays.
million. Now we did some increases in their rent. We did some increases in their contributions. But it's a substantial investment from the team. And I want to thank them for being here. And now it's guaranteed through at least 2050.
The amount that Milwaukee and Milwaukee County are paying has lowered from the original proposal. Was that an attempt to get Democrats on board, and did that work?
It was. I mean, it was $7.5 million. It went down to $5 million a year. So they're still making a significant investment, and that's good because the number one economic driver and the most economic benefit accrues to the city and county of Milwaukee, which is why they are our partners, along with the state who owns the facility, to make sure the team stays, hopefully has great winning seasons, and lots of opportunity for us to also look at new things.
We've heard talk about a ticket tax on non-game items coming from the public hearing. Is that part of what the Assembly is going to pass?
That's not part of what the Assembly is. I know the Senate is looking at that. I certainly am open to that idea if that's what it takes to get it through the end. I don't really want to necessarily make it more expensive for people to attend an event if we already have a proposal that has strong support. But hey, if there are good ideas that help it get through the Senate, I want to make sure that we are a team player with that.
Would you back a ticket tax on games as well?
I really think it should be on non-game events. I do not want to make Brewer games more expensive. I know one of the things that has drawn the Brewers to want to stay here is which you have such a strong, loyal fan base. And part of that is the number of tickets that we sell. We're a small market TV team, so we need every dollar that's possible to make the team competitive. So I don't want the team to be continually losing money. But at the same time, I think we have a reasonable balance between what the team is giving, what the public is giving through the income taxes paid by the players, and then ultimately what the locals are giving through the rebate and the sales tax.
Have you talked with the governor? Is he going to sign this?
The governor's office has been involved. I feel very good that he also is supportive of it, but I would let you ask him yourself.
The MAPS legislation, somewhat going back to impeachment that passed the Assembly, sitting in the Senate, they said they don't have the votes, may not even take it up. Is that bill dead in your mind?
Oh, not at all. I mean, my understanding is there's going to be a hearing announced next week, that it works its way through the state Senate. I still think the very best way for us to do map making is that the legislature goes through a process which we have right now, which is constitutional, been found constitutional in 2 different courts. But I also think that rather than having this continual argument that depends on which justice gets elected and then the maps are overturned and you don't know who your state representative is, having a nonpartisan process is the second best option. So I don't think it's something that should have done anything other than hopefully gather bipartisan support. I have heard for 20 years Democrats say this is their holy grail. We handed them the holy grail and all of a sudden it's not good enough. So my hope is that we listen at the public hearing, see if there are things that could make the deal even better, and that we get to the point where it can get across the finish line so we don't even need the court to act on the maps because we found a new way to get it done.
Earlier this year, you said we could see a medical marijuana bill this fall. Is that happening?
I think it's strongly possible. Our caucus has been talking about it. We had a presentation. There has been a group of legislators, about 8 of us, myself included, who have been working on putting together a proposal. We had a first discussion with the caucus. So my hope is that before Christmas we can have a plan that actually gets out.
There's been a lot of talk about 2024 already as we sit here today.
Sure.
Are you going to seek re-election?
That's my plan right now.
For sure.
Yeah, well, for right now, for sure. Yeah, I mean, a lot of it depends on the maps, right? I think that if you're a liberal targeting conservatives in Wisconsin, I have a feeling that I will be on the top of their list. And if they do a political gerrymander, I worry that they will try to take out effective conservatives because that's the only way they could win potentially in the legislature. So only time will tell.
So if the maps change, there's a chance you could not seek re-election?
I mean, it depends on if they gerrymander me with 3 other representatives. I mean, with the Democratic plan, they had me paired with 3 other Republican representatives to try to take me out. So I guess only time will tell.
All right, the Brewers bill on the Assembly floor Tuesday.
The Republican bill is expected to include more than a dozen Democratic votes. Here's Minority Leader Greta Neubauer.
It does minimize the impact on budgets for the city and county of Milwaukee and does some good work to offset a local contribution. So we're grateful to see that progress.
Does it have your support?
We're still having internal discussions in the caucus, but we hope to see a Brewers deal move forward.
Up next, Israel at war this weekend, an all-out assault on Hamas. Next, a rabbi with close ties to Wisconsin bringing us inside Israel and the growing response back at home.